So we're taking a little bit of a different approach. So we're going to go through the text together, kind of piece by piece. And it's a short text. The Shanxing chapter is quite short. So we figure we'll just read through the whole text. And then Youngsun will talk more about the coherence of the chapter and the ideas in the chapter. And then I've got stuff on kind of situating the chapter in relation to other chapters. And that, at this point, is like super speculative, and I'm making broad claims that hopefully will at least create some discussion. I'm kind of trying to maybe refine Chris's group of 5 discourses. So unfortunately, he's not here, but that's kind of the direction that I want to end up in. You want to say anything?
Oh, yeah, I would like to say something because it's great honor to be part of this reading group by distinguished scholars of Zhuangzi, and I'm really distinguished from you because I am not. For me, the Zhuangzi is the least familiar and the most difficult text for me. And so, in order to understand this text, last year I studied in Sojong's graduate seminar on Zhuangzi, and I found out that it is even more difficult than I have ever imagined. So I think Zhuangzi is not my text. So, but this time she asked me to join. And then I said, no, I cannot do it. And then it seems that there is a spot should be filled. So, and also Mark said, you are the friendliest group of scholars. So you are not going to kill me. Right? So this, I take courage. So, but anyway, so thank you so much. So I will try my best. But if I say some crazy things, so don't be mad, please. Yeah.
All right, so. Okay, yeah, so we'll just like jump right in, read through the text, and then talk more about the context of the text. So this is the start of the text. Those who repair the natural dispositions according to convention, studying so as to seek to return to the beginning, and those who polish desires according to convention, thinking so as to reach the ultimate clarity, can be called a blinkered and benighted people. There's actually something blocking the PowerPoints. Can that get moved? Or else I need to open my computer so I can read my own PowerPoint.
Togi.
The ancients who manage the way use calmness to nourish knowing. When knowing is born, but there's nothing for knowing to do, that can be called using knowing to nourish calmness. When knowing and calmness interact to nourish each other, then harmony and coherent order issue forth from the natural dispositions. Now, virtue is this harmony, and the way are these coherent patterns. So I'll just note a couple of interesting things about it. But in terms of textual problems, there's a couple. So the first line repeats that su. Most people think the second one is a interpolation and cut it, and that seems to make sense to me based on the parallel. Guoshang, though, keeps both in there in that first line. So that's one question. And some editions don't have the zhi before the sheng. So the zhi sheng are wu zhi wei. But the zhi, I think, makes more sense there, and that's what most people have for it. The one other just kind of textual issue is the punctuation of the first lines. So the question is whether su shui is together or whether it's shan xing yu su, shui qiu, right? It's not really, in terms of the content, I don't know that it makes much difference, so I don't know that we need to really discuss it. All the translations I looked at take it as a compound, su shui, together. But I don't really see the justification for that, because later on it uses su twice by itself, not in a compound. And particularly that shi xing yu su seems like a very similar usage. Just doing a search, su is almost never used as a modifier. So I didn't quite look through everything on C-text of Pre-Chin and Han, but I looked through a lot. And there were a few uses of it to describe a person. So that quote's actually from Shunzi, the suran, the suru. I only found one that has it modifying some other noun that's not a person, and that's, interestingly, in the Tiandi chapter, has that su yan. But I still think the use of the su there is a bit different from if it was su shui or su si. But again, I don't know that it really matters for the content, right? This was just one of the questions in trying to sort out the meaning of it. In terms of other issues with it, just a couple of things that I'll point out. That use of tian that I'm translating as calmness, it might just be significant because it appears only in chapters 10, 11, 13, 15, and then 29, the Robert Jur chapter. So it seems to be something associated with the discourses around those chapters in particular. So I mean, calmness, stillness appears in tons of places, but that particular word is only in those ones. That use of the Gujar Jurdalja, that Jurdao is critiqued in maybe the Tiandi chapter for criticizing those who want to manage the Tao. So I don't know that that's significant, but the fact that it's used positively here might be significant. In terms of just the contents, it's interesting that it's a relatively positive role for Jur, for knowing, or maybe it's awareness here, so that it seems like the proper functioning of your Xing actually requires that there's Jur, but that it be, interacting with this Tian, this calmness. So that relatively positive role for Jur is interesting. And then the last part, that Li comes out of our Xing. So rather than Li as something in the world that we conform to, like the Tian Li here is being produced from our Xing. And I think that's significant, and I'll talk more about that later. The last line, I think the emphasis could be two different ways. So I'm reading it as De is this harmony that comes from our Xing, and Dao is this Li that is generated from our Xing. That's how Zipporah reads it. I think Chen Guying reads it that way. In that case, it's a pretty strong claim that what matters for Dao is really just what comes out of our Xing. Right, so it's putting a very strong emphasis on Xing as the ground for it. You could read it slightly in a looser way to say, this Xing produces a He that then joins in with the broader He that is De. It produces a Li that kind of aligns with the Li that is the Dao. So rather than take this as kind of the source of the Dao as our Xing, you could take it as more as Xing, what connects us to the Dao. Textually, I don't see there's any way to distinguish between those two readings. I just like the way I did it better. And that fits my overall reading of the passage.
So the second passage, I think, is about, so when they explain Tao, so when there is nothing, the virtue does not embrace, this is a benevolence. When there's nothing, the way does not order or mark order, this is rightness. When rightness becomes clear and things become intimate to each other, this is a loyalty. When the inner heart is pure and genuine and return to the proper feelings, and this is music. When trustworthiness is shown in face and posture and occurs with a cultural pattern, and this is a ritual. When ritual and music are carried out universally or one-sidedly, the world is thrown into disorder. When they are correct, one considers one's own virtue, and one's virtue does not encroach on others. And if one's virtue encroach on others, other things will lose their inborn nature. So this is translation. And I think the first day when Chris talked about Xing ethics, I asked him about this one, because translators have different interpretation about Ron and Yi and Zhong and Li and Wei and Li here, whether they have a positive value or a negative value. So I think this is one thing we have to solve. And if we consider this benevolence and righteousness and loyalty and ritual and music has kind of positive value, then we can understand the later part, Li, Wei, Pianxing is appropriate. It's like if they are positive but they are partially practiced, the world will be disorder. Or another way is if they, Ron and Yi and all these values have negative value, then we can understand Li and Wei, Pianxing. Is when this negative value prevalently practiced, universally practiced, and the world will be disorder. So I think these two problems are somehow related to each other. And for me, the most difficult part is the B. What does B refers to? What they are corrected or what are corrected. So, and also check with other translations. I don't really understand what that B referring to. So this is something I would like to solve later when we talk about overall structure of the passage.
I'll just note on that Roth has a little discussion of the affiliation of this text. I'll talk about that later, but he thinks these should be cut. And Chen Guying actually argues that the stretch from that all should be cut because it's not Taoist. Right? But it just worth noting that Chen Guying does think that should be. He doesn't say it should be cut. He says it's an interpolation by a later Huang Lao perspective. Roth thinks it should be cut, basically. Okay, so then the people of the past centered themselves in undivided obliviousness. I borrowed that. Some of this is borrowed from Zipporah. At one with their era, they attained tranquil indifference. At this time, yin and yang were harmonious and peaceful. Ghosts and spirits were not disturbed. The four seasons attained regularity. The myriad things were not harmed. And the multitudes of living things were not cut short. Although people had knowledge, they had nothing upon which to use it. This is called the utmost oneness. At this time, without anyone doing it, they were constantly so of themselves. So maybe, I mean, that last line echoes the language of Tao Te Ching 51, right? I hesitate to say it's really a reference to that because it's such a kind of generic kind of line, and the context is different. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a line that was kind of floating around, but still, maybe it's a reference to the Tao Te Ching. The first phrase, the people of the past center themselves in undivided obliviousness, I think that could be read in two ways. So one would be a certain state of mind that they have, and that seems to be how Zipporah does it with this undivided obliviousness. But I think given the themes of the passage, it could mean that they weren't noticed, right? So they weren't noticed, but they were still one with their era. So they weren't like removed from the time, and yet nobody really noticed them. I think maybe it could be read that way as well. One of the things, so this idea that the natural order is a kind of interdependent, I think, with these people of the past. So their cultivation is influencing the natural order, is worth noting. And that in this whole section, there's nothing about conforming to the natural order, right? That kind of orientation that this would be a guide for us isn't there, even though it mentions the natural order arising from cultivation or whatever. Do you want me to just do it?
Oh, yeah, please, thank you. And then it goes to when virtues came to dwindle and decline, Sui and Fuxi started to govern the world. As a result, people were compliant, but they were no longer in unity. When virtue further dwindled and declined, the divine farmer and the yellow emperor started to govern the world. As a result, people were secured, maybe physically or materially, but they were no longer compliant. And then again, when virtue further dwindled and declined, Yao and Shun started to govern the world. They initiated the stream of the governing and transforming, and thus diluted the purity and shattered the simplicity of people. And they parted from the way for the sake of the goodness and imperiled their virtue for the sake of moral conduct. And then they forsook their inborn nature and followed their minds. The understanding that is obtained through one's mind and another's mind in competition can never be enough to bring stability to the world. And then they added to this understanding the cultural refinement and also augmented it with extensive knowledge. And then the cultural refinement destroyed the substance, the genuine feeling, and the extensive knowledge engulfed the mind. And then people started to become perplexed and disordered. And then there was no way to return to their inborn nature and feelings and restore their original condition. So I think this part can describe the kind of decline of the world. And for me, the virtue decline and dwindle, and whose virtue referring to here? So I think this is one question I have. And another one is very minor point, is compliant, but people are in perfect harmony, but they are not compliant. What does that mean? Is what they are not compliant. So this one, if we have clear understanding of Shun means, then I think it's a better understanding how its gradual decline happens. And the most difficult part is here, Xin Wi Xin Shi Zhi. So it's the mind and mind, Shi Zhi. So what does this phrase actually mean? And Guo Xiang, the Xin here is one's mind and other's mind. It competing to obtain the knowledge. And I think Chang Xu and Yin also have several similar kind of interpretation. This mind here is one's mind and other's mind, maybe together in competition in obtaining knowledge. So this part is, I think, another difficult part to understand. So, but if you have clear answer now, you can give answers. Otherwise, you can bet them, and then you can give an answer later.
Yeah. Does anybody have thoughts on that? One of the commentaries says that it's referring to divisions within one heart. I really can't think of a plausible way to read it.
So here you interpret that kind of negatively because in competition. Where's the competition?
No, it's from the commentary. There is no
From Guo
competition.
Xiang's
Yeah.
commentary.
But could it be positive in the sense that if it were the case that so you would expect that 心与心视之 would be sufficient to predict 天下, but here it's not the case. So
Yeah.
because of some other factor. Is that correct?
Well, but it's following, they departed from their xing and followed their xin. So it's like it's off track there, and then this is describing maybe a further step of that.
The R suggests contrasted with 不足以定现象. So 不足以定现象 implies that the 心与心实质 is a good thing. Not as good as what came before. It's a good thing, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
Because that R is a but.
And it is stages of decline, because then because that wasn't enough, then they tried to use when.
So it's originally what is good is like following the nature.
Yeah, following nature.
So later on, people follow the mind, and also there's more and more mind, and there's no way we can return to, bring back to the stability. So I think it is maybe negative.
Like
Oh.
people like understanding each
Each
other.
other. Mm.
So it's like socializing or something social.
It doesn't have to be a bump, though, right? I mean,
Just looking at Sui Da Huan, it seems to have two different punctuations, right? Going around
Yeah.
the Statue of Liberty. That one after sure and one after, shin yu shin sure.
You could put a comma between the sure and the jur, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That's some people have that.
Yeah.
You guys one that argues against that, says should be read together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that is the older punctuation.
okay.
So if you put the comma, what would it be then? Hearts recognized each other, but this knowledge was not sufficient? Well, actually, do you wanna-
sure seems like mutuality or like Ren kind of behavior, like hearts recognizing other hearts is like I see the ox even like going to sacrifice and it feels you feel bad about it, like that kind of thing, but that is not sufficient.
Anyway, I haven't seen something that sounds like that as a criticism, right? So I don't know if it's like they're too caught up in judgment, sort of analytic thinking, that's the problem, or if it's, I don't know. But it is interesting that Shin is clearly what goes along with the divergence from our Xing. So there's some opposition between Xing and Xin going on there. So that's interesting also, I think. Okay, so looking at it in this way, when the era loses the way loses the era. When the way and the era lose each other, how can people of the way rise up in the era? How can the era rise up in the way? When the way has nothing by which to rise up in the era, and the era has nothing by which to rise up in the way, then even if sagely people are not in the midst of mountains and forests, their virtue will be hidden. Hiding, therefore, is not hiding oneself. The strange thing with this is this mutuality of the era, the time, losing the way, and the way losing the era. It's a little hard for me to think what that means for the way to lose the era. Because the time losing the way, that makes sense. Whether the way is like the Tao, like some ontological source and they're disconnected, or if it's just like the proper way, they lose that. But how either the way could lose the world, or like the proper way could lose the world, like then the proper way would just be gone. I don't know. So there's something strange about that.
But I understand it as Tao lose the way is Tao lose the place they can be practiced. So it's not the agent, because the world lost the way, and also the way is not practiced, and they lost the.
Practice diversion.
Yes, there's the world.
Yeah, but it sounds like that would just be a situation where the way is gone.
Yeah, I think the way
Well,
is
right,
gone.
so I think you could read it metaphorically that way as saying the way is gone, and it's just rhetorically reversing it. But it sounds like, no, like the way's still there, but it's
The way
lost the
Chinese
world.
is 以非道为道, so people are taking the wrong ways as the way.
Yeah.
Couldn't it also just be to emphasize the breach? And then the question then comes up, 何有心乎是,何有心乎? So, I mean, if you only have 事丧道义, right, and you add 道丧事义, it is like emphasizes again this kind of breach between the 事 and the 道. It's like, I mean, it's maybe just a matter of emphasis.
Yeah, right. It might be just rhetorical.
To get to that question, then, it's really a problem. 何有心乎是,
I mean, maybe put it this way is also to emphasize this sort of vicious cycleness of vicious cyclicity of what's going on here. Because like in the previous thing we had, okay, they moved from Xing to Xin, started to emphasize Xin, and then you have 心与心相视而不足以定天下. 然后 added to this, because once they devolved and then they took this competition or not, or whatever, the 心与心相视 is the kind of the way. Now they found that this was insufficient, and therefore they had to add in when and whatever else. So there's sort of like a vicious cycle that maybe this is kind of bringing out somehow.
I'm not sure I have missed something, but regarding the 心与心失志, that part, actually, we can refer to Lu Deming. He said 相修 version and the other version, actually, 失 is appearing as a 职业, 职分, that 职, take it, and then in charge of it, something like that. The Lu Deming, 诗文, yeah. It is not 知识的识, 而是知分的, so yeah, how to say? So 职业.
It's a job, like
Yeah,
jobs.
job.
They're fighting for
Take charge
jobs.
of, yeah. And
Shi
then-
being taken as 知, yeah, 知.
职分 or 职业. So maybe we can think about the alternative word, I think. Okay, I will, where is it? Okay, 心与心, so they say 相修的 burden. Yeah, there is a 知. So it means that 敌and我. So it's a, yeah. Are there? Can you see that? I was looking for, because it's from my note, so
I
I'm
have it,
actually looking
yeah.
for the, maybe C text has the somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take charge of, so they are kind of competing to take it, something like that. So
I think that
maybe
is
it doesn't make
similar to
sense.
what
Yeah.
commentary as well. So I think like the
Yeah. Then, but the Lu Deming's opinion is original text has a certain version of, yes. Yeah.
like they are like the
I think 心与心知, that 知 would mean the professionalization of knowledge. Like there's, you like,
But
Oh,
Lu Deming's
yeah.
translation is closer to the Guoxiang,
yeah.
rather than profession.
They make of knowledge a profession, something like that. I don't know that I like it as well either. Like, I think that sounds like an ex post. It's like an after the fact kind of,
Yeah, and then the 心与心
Listen.
just means everyone.
Yeah.
and that's a
Right.
dumb way to say everyone, right?
Yeah. Like there's no mutuality then of the you there, right? Well, I guess maybe each other, we each professionalize, I don't know. I've forgotten which way we're going, right? Okay.
opposite.
Okay.
This is where we were, right?
Please stick to your mic. Yeah, the professionals say if we do not stick to mic, the people participating online
Okay.
cannot hear us.
Yeah.
Please, yes.
So I was going to say with this, the Tao and the air are losing each other. I think this is reading too much into it, but if the root sort of connection with Tao is through Xing, and maybe there's a way in which Tao here is all the morality that's being promoted, but it has no rooting anymore in Xing, right? So you still have a way that's there, but it's no longer like.
I have a small note, the final one, 淫故不自淫, the final phrase. You read the 自 here as a reflexive pronoun, right? But could it also mean voluntarily or something like that on one's own initiative? Because if in would be 自淫, then they would really hide in the Shanlin. But this is not the case, so it's not that they're hidden on a voluntary basis.
Yeah, that's actually what I meant by, that's
Oh.
what I had in mind when I translated it that way. They're not deliberately putting themselves into hiding is how I was thinking of it, yeah. There is a reading, I think Washang actually reads it positively as like, the ziyin is like a ziran kind of yin.
Oh.
I think. But I don't think that that doesn't seem right in context to me.
And going later, and it says, as for those who, as for those who ancient called retired scholars, it was not that they concealed their bodies and refused to show himself. It was not that they shunned their words and refused to let them out. It was not that they stored away their understanding and refused to manifest it. The fate of times was too much awry. If the fate of time is met, they act in the world in a grand scale, but they will return to unity without leaving any trace. If the fate of time is not met, they fail miserably in the world, but they will deepen their roots and rested in perfection and waited. This is the way they preserve themselves. And problem with this, this is the first part is, I think like the sages were indeed showing themselves, saying their wisdom and putting forth their understanding, but their words are not heard, or their wisdom are not seen, and their understanding are not have impact on the world. I think that is the first sentence meaning. And the second problem, it's a small problem, the fan yi. I checked, and some people translated the sages return to the unity when they met the right time, or they return the world to the unity. So there's two options, but I think the first would be better. And the third question is ningji. Translators translate perfectly still or utter tranquility or profound stillness. But if we read together as a shankan and ningji, I think it should be kind of verb, object, and verb, object. And ningji, what actually means, I am not sure. So, and the Changxuaning says ji is referring to the ultimateness of the nature. So, and this part, actually, I am not really clearly sure about this, the phrase. And another phrase is die. So if we just read the English translation, it feels like they are waiting for the right timing, but actually it's not making sense. So what they are waiting for, and Guxiang, it says dai zhi qi zhi wei, like they are relying on themselves. And Changxuaning is dai zhongnian, they are waiting for their death. So it's two different interpretations of dai, so what they are waiting for. So, and I think that is a very important part.
Why did you think it's not waiting for a better time?
So, so for me, I read these passages and there is no turning back. It's not like the good time and bad time and good time, bad time. It is kind of gradual decline and there is no turning back. So if this is the case, they cannot wait for the right timing.
But
Or never comes. So then how can we understand the dai? So
but doesn't dai fit in well in that, the dang shi ming, the idea of dang shi ming and bu dang shi ming, doesn't that kind of imply that, well, you want to wait for the
right timing.
yeah, when you're dang the shi ming.
But the overall structure in the previous section, it talked about the gradual decline.
Yeah.
So I think that is very distinctive view about the Shanxing. Is the world is not kind of no turning back. It is kind of gradual declination.
Well, that's interesting then, that this may imply that there is a turning back.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's because I expect this is kind of turning back or something like that. But in my impression, I think there is no turning back. So this is what they want to try to emphasize. So I want you to ask, because when we think about like Chinese history, there's kind of cyclical, is more kind of common view, the cycle of the history. But I think they don't have that kind of view here. So what we can think about. Or,
I think when I read that phrase, I read the object of dai as ningji.
Ningji.
Like our daizhi, like so shen gen ningji or daizhi, like you depend on that ningji, maybe? Would that work?
What is ningji?
Didn't you just say what it was? Like perfect stillness, utter tranquility,
no,
or
that is the translation, the common translation of the ningji. But in my view, like shangan is like the verb and object. Then maybe ningji is kind of verb and object would be proper than what ji means here. Because in Zhuangzi chapter, I think wuji is more important thing. But so I'm not sure what ji actually referring to, or just kind of perfect stillness. Then it's very bland. It's not. So that's why I'm asking what is ningji.
Teng Xuanning's reading is 保宁至极之性, because our kind of topic is 性. So, but you're not happy with Teng Xuanning's reading? I'm just curious
I'm not sure about the 性 is equal to ji.
But the 极 is usually, for example, 自然 or 极 something is a kind of saying ultimate. But it can be actually diverse according to the context. When we talk about, I don't know, Tao or skill, then 极 can mean utmost, like skillfulness, something like that. But our topic is 性, kind of. Then you can read it as some kind of utmost, or so according to Teng Xuanning, 至极之性. So utmost kind of nature.
Referring to 性, I think I'm more happy than just a perfect stillness or the utter tranquility. But I wasn't sure about.
Kind of.
Yeah,
So
whether ji
we
be-
can actually apply the same the sentence structure. So ning is a verb and ji is a object.
Then it is kind of perfect match with the, like returning to the nature, returning to the nature. And die.
I mean, it's a good point that you raised, though, because it's the previous evolution does seem intractable, right? So, like, what are they waiting for? But I mean, the local context really does seem to suggest that they're waiting for the right shi, right? The right shi ming. So it's, and then it brings us back to the beginning of the passage too, where it's like whether the su is there or not, right? But 学以繁其出 or something like, what was it? Yeah. So is it that they're going about it the wrong way because they're doing it through? Then that raises the question again. We should go back to that at some point. But whether the su does indeed belong in the second line, or maybe even second pair of lines? Is it like that they're su xue and su si perhaps? That there's a way to go back to the chu, but that I'm getting too far ahead, I think. But there's some connection with the first passage. Fu qi chu.
This is where we're reading it somewhat differently. Because, I mean, you're right, though. It is literally seem to be saying that there's no turning back. But I took it to be, by that method, you'll never get back again. And so that it's not so pessimistic. But I think there is ground for what you're saying, that it is really pessimistic. And if it is, that conflicts with a number of things I'm going to say later. Because then it really is like kind of relentlessly against getting involved with things, because it's always going to be the wrong time forever.
I mean, there's one third possibility of reading it here. I'm not actually advocating it, but if the su belonged in the second, it was reduplicated there. 善性于俗，俗学以求复其命. It could have been that it was su written with a reduplicated marker, and the second line, when they copied it, they just forgot about and they just solely didn't copy su a second time. So when it got recopied, the second su dropped out. So in other words, it could have been 华语于俗，俗是以求治其名. And then I'm not necessarily, I don't think that's problematic too. It's kind of a weird way of phrasing it.
Is
But
su the subject there? Is
it would have to be
like-
an adverb, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. There's almost no use.
Yeah, I
of
know.
su as an
It's
adverb.
kind of problematic, but
Yeah.
just a third option there.
Yeah. Anything else on that?
Just a simple question of clarification. So, 反义 here, this E means going back to what was previously defined as 词之谓之一 in the earlier on in the text, right? This kind of 古之人在昏蒙之中那个情况, right? That's what that's okay. Okay.
Right. As for those of the past who preserve themselves, they did not use disputation to ornament knowing, did not use knowing to exhaust the world, did not use knowing to exhaust virtue. Aloofly dwelling in their place and turning back to their natural dispositions, what more would they then do? The way surely does not have petty conduct, and virtue surely does not have petty understanding. Petty understanding harms virtue, petty conduct harms the way. Thus it said, rectify yourself, and that is all. Having complete joy is called attaining one's aspirations. What those of the past called attaining one's aspirations did not refer to a royal chariot and crown. It referred to having nothing that could increase one's joy. So this, again, I think is relatively positive toward knowing, in that it seems like knowing is okay, but don't ornament it with disputation. And it seems to be even okay as long as you don't use it to like exhaustively pursue these things, right? So as long as you keep it within a certain limit. That, the Weiran, I translated as aloofly, I think, borrowing from, I was borrowed from somebody else, maybe from Zipporah. The dwelling in their place, what exactly that means, if that just means in their they're in their proper location, or if it is about, again, like they're not deliberately fleeing things, they just stay where they are. I don't know, I find that phrasing just a little bit interesting, this dwelling, the Chuchi Swa there. The question I have with this is what the Xiaoxing and the Xiaoshi really mean. So I did petty conduct, which is already kind of putting an interpretation on it, I think. But it's not clear what it means, and it's kind of odd that the issue isn't that Xing is bad or that Shi is bad. It seems to be implying the opposite, like those are okay, but not the petty forms of them, right? Like that seems to be the contrast that's being drawn. So, yeah, I guess if people, if it's looking at the text itself, it could be referring to what was said right before it, and really probably it's not so much the using knowledge, the stuff on the knowledge, but then the next, like, what more would they have to do? That would be maybe what would count as small conduct and small knowing or understanding. It could be contrasted to dashing that was earlier, like that would make sense. But then the fact that it seems to think that dashing is okay in the right context is interesting, because it is, you did it as acting in the world on a grand scale, which you would, that's a very active kind of view. I don't know if people have ideas on it. Then I thought, it is using bu shao, so it could be, if the shao is being used verbally somehow, I'd like it to say the Tao certainly doesn't put restrictions on action and restrictions on knowing, but I just don't think that's going to be what it's saying. And if anybody has any thoughts on what that would be referring to, I don't feel like there's hardly any rule that is like a has to be.
Xiao has to, because what's negated by bu is a verb. That's pretty much how we define verbs in classical Chinese. So if it's negated by bu, it's an action. It's an action that's being negated of some sort. And if
maybe Xing is the action then.
Yeah, it could be that Xing could be the action. Xing could be the verb.
What would you take it to be verbally then?
If xiao is a verb, or if Xing is to treat as xiao.
Yeah.
Or to cause it to be xiao.
Yeah, I think I originally did it as does not minimize actions, which doesn't really make any sense. But I was trying to just literally
I think
get it.
this Xiaoxing or Xiaoshi, we can actually think about like chapter 2, Qiulun, they say, Dao yin yu xiao ceng, right? So, 言说话 or 语言 yin yu 融合 融化, remember that, right?
Yeah.
Dao yin, so maybe we can actually relate that meaning to here.
It doesn't act smallly. It doesn't act pettily.
But that would, what with the small me? Because petty is already making it sound like in a moralistic sense, which is probably not the case. But if it's saying it doesn't act on like a small scale way, that seems weird.
But I think sorry.
Or is it not?
I think I was also thinking of this Qi Wu Lun example, but it's also hard to interpret what Xiaocheng there means and the Ronghua. But I think it means small-scale accomplishment. So the Ru and the Mo, they're accomplished in their own respective small ways, and they elaborate on that Ronghua.
Right.
And so this is it's the kind of scope. You're an expert in a small scope. But I think that's what it means in Qi Wu Lun, but not sure if it's the same here. So it has to do with scope.
Yeah, and then that would contrast the Da Xing that was used earlier, which seems to be about scope, right?
It is right that Zhuangzi, or especially in a chapter, didn't every time, like, how to say, appreciate Da. Sometimes when they like kind of chapter 1 and chapter 2, sometimes compare Da and Xiao. Sometimes just say badly about Xiaocheng or something like that, but sometimes not. But why here we cannot read it as that kind of meaning? So because Dao, I don't know. I mean, where here will it promote Da Xing or not? But at least here Xing and Shi or Zhi, right? That is some kind of achievement. So I think we can relate it to the chapter 2, the meaning of Xiaocheng, I think, right?
Kind of related to that, though, I have a reading of Dao Gu Bu Xiao Xing as in it doesn't act on a small scale. Because, and De Bu Xiao Shi, it doesn't know about little stuff. Because what's that writing against? Right? It's writing against some argument where Tian, like, it punishes your sins or something, right? You know, like if you do something bad, Tian will punish you or resent you or something. And Dao doesn't do that. It doesn't care about the little stuff you do. And De doesn't know about like little, like it's not omniscient, right?
I mean, the sense of quan, the Tao is, once you start, going for small things like your carriages and, how did you translate that? The xuanmian. Those are always in some sense xiao. You're striving for things that are particular in this world rather than being content with everything. So maybe da, the xiao, and that's in that sense. I don't know.
There is no promotion of Da, so it's not saying that if you want to pursue Dao, then you should make big. He's not saying that, but so that's why I say the Xiaocheng already means that Dao in Yun Xiaocheng there. Their context doesn't talk about you should be bigger, right? It means that we take some achievement as a big. But he called it Xiaocheng, right? So here we don't have to. So the one more thing I would like to make sure is because this at least is limiting this chapter. This chapter Dao is not kind of big thing, right? Which is a kind of some kind of let's say coherence and course inside our nature, something like that. So Dao is not the kind of bigger or entirety kind of thing, but rather the Tao is what we should follow in order to altering nature or maybe make it better nature, right? Am I right? I read this Tao and De in that way, not as a kind of the bigger Tao or entire world or entire course, that kind of thing. But am I right?
Yes, so that's if we go back to the Dao connected to the Li that comes out of our Xing, right? And the De is the He that comes out of our Xing, then this would be whatever that direction coming out of our Xing. That doesn't Xiao Xing or Xiao Shi, but That's interesting. I'm not sure that helps me understand it, but I think it's possible that this is saying that any xing is bad, any shi is bad, and it's all xiao, right? I think the xiao cheng, that's one way to read that. It's not saying that da cheng is okay. It's that any cheng is going to be xiao and it's all bad. But I think the factor against that is that, is that here? Where is that? Yeah, right. So, this is it could just be coincidence, but it seems a little odd to use xiaoxing that close. Again, this is if we're reading it as one piece too. It seems like that xiaoxing should connect or echo this daxing. That's what I was thinking.
But here also, we don't have to read daxing like contrast to that xiaoxing, because this da chong hu tianxia, it doesn't mean that it's good, right? So, yeah.
Wait, what? Say that again?
What I want to say is, this one is actually, this daxing is not really directly contrast to our xiaoxing, the dao gu bu xiaoxing, that part. Here seems to me, da xing hu tianxia, da chong hu tianxia. These parallel are actually limited to this passage. That is my reading.
Yeah. So then the daxing and the xiaoxing is just coincidence, you think?
Daxing seems good here. Do you think
It
it's
is-
not
it
good?
is.
Yeah, it's good, but not because of daxing, or because of dang shi ming, because dang shi ming. So this is good, but which is not that da is always good, or da is.
But
No, but-
Daxing and Uji sound good.
No. So what I want to say is here, 当时命而大行乎天下, because this da is related to 天下, so that's why I put da. So second line, 不当时命, that is a good bad one, right? Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, because this is 天下, so that's why here put da, but it doesn't mean that 大行 is always good, 小行 is always bad. It's
Well,
not
I think
that.
what that passage, I think it has kind of very positive value. Like when they said they met the right timing, I think they are referring to when everything is harmonious and everything is patterned, so they just greatly practiced. But in now here, but this Tao cannot be practiced by the small action like the benevolence and filiality. Yeah, I think that is what actually they are saying, the daxing and xiaoxing.
Yeah, one possibility is like this is giving you two options. There's daxing, or there's don't do anything.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah,
xiaoxing is like when you're trying to force a middle ground between it or something.
Yeah, so you couldn't have it. It couldn't say Dang Shiming are Xiaoxing Yu Tianxia, right? So if you're a bodhisattva, you're saving all sentient beings, So I think that's so I agree with you. It's not the Da that makes it. It's the Dang Shiming. But once you Dang Shiming, it's going to be Da Xing. And if you don't Dang Shiming, you'll be like Confucius. No one will employ you. It's not as if you can do it part way. And the thing about doing it part way also seems to apply to the part that comes after it in the second part, because you Chun Le, does it say Chun Le? Chun Le, it's like it's not a matter of like being somewhat satisfied, somewhat happy with things. It's like you're as happy as you can be and no more. So it's like the whole thing, and it's not like then you can be incrementally more happy. You just, you jitsu, you know sufficiency, and so you chunla. And so it's, anyway, yeah.
So then what is now, then they're talking about the channels. So what is nowadays called attainment of aspiration means the getting of fine carriage and caps. But carriage and caps pertain to body. They have nothing to do with the inborn nature and mandate or allotment of life. When such things come suddenly, they temporarily stay. As for why temporary stay, when they come, one cannot keep them. When they leave, one cannot stop them. Therefore, we should not indulge our aspiration because of carriage and caps, and we should not pursue the conventional practice because of hardship and poverty. Since the joy is the same in both cases, there are no worries. But nowadays, if what temporary state leaves us, we are not joyful. Look at it in that way. Although people may have been joyful, they have never stopped being desolate. Therefore, it is that those who forsook themselves for external things and lost their inborn nature in the conventional world are people who stand on their heads. So this is the final part. And then, so it's for me, the difficult part is Xingming. Xing is now here referred as kind of inborn nature, but Ming, I'm not sure what Ming here refers to. So this is the most important part. And the second point and third point is very minor. It does not affect the overall meaning of the chapter, but just because Qi Lai Bu Ko Wei is commonly translated as their coming cannot be prevented and their coming cannot be obstructed. And their coming means referring to like the fine carriage and caps. But I think I checked the we, and it refers to stable or enclosure. So I think it's better to interpret as when they come, we cannot keep them or we cannot preserve them. I think this is more a proper translation. And the third one is Wei Chang Bu Huang Nie. They have never stopped being desolate. I think this is a Brooks translation. I think it also makes sense. But I checked the Huang, and it's sometimes used as a Wang in Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi. So maybe we can understand as they have never stopped desiring. Even when they have good things, maybe they had never stopped desiring, considering that Quan Lo is, Lao Quan is, there is nothing we can add more. But anyways, but the second point, the third point it's very minor point. It doesn't really affect the whole chapter. But Xingming is, I'm not sure how Xingming is used in the other part of the Zhuangzi.
My understanding, the Xingming is one of the Liu Xiaoguan, the evidence, yes, hypothesis of, because we all know Xing doesn't appear, any single case of Xing appear in the inner chapter, but outer chapter there's a lot of Xing Ming Zhi Qing, and Da Sheng, what?
One passage has Xingming Zhiting like 5 times. That's just one pericope.
Okay, yes, one pericope if you like. Yes, you can say that. So because this is very kind of special expression, and then so far, my understanding of what is Qingming Zhi Qing is kind of repraising of inner chapters. That is my understanding. Because, yeah, so if I just say follow my, Xing is what I have, what I have born with, something like that. And then Ming is the other side. So whatever Dao or Tian gave. So we have two kind of mutual kind of position, kind of affronting position, and then we should, when you just say what I have get, then we can just say the. But if you want to a little bit pinpoint or telling, the both sides, then we should say Ming, not only Xing.
So you
That
think
is my
Xing and
understanding.
Ming both referring to the one's
Kind
virtue,
of, yes,
but
but-
from the different perspective?
Yes.
Just that phrase Xingming appears in chapter 8, 11, 14, but then 22 and 24. So just the phrase Xingming. So it's, yeah. I wonder if here it could mean Xing and Ming, where Ming would refer to the age that you're in.
Age? Or,
I mean, the timing. I don't know if that. No, I don't think that makes sense.
Because like then age is kind of contingent thing, then it's like the
Yeah, right.
the cat and carriage is like it's temporary thing I cannot control or.
Yeah. So they are Ming,
Oh yeah.
right?
So-
They're not Xing, but they are
oh
Ming.
yeah, they're Ming.
Yeah. So do you want to just
Oh,
go?
yeah, maybe-
It's
yeah.
3 o'clock, so we had a half hour to the break. You want to go into your part?
Yeah, we need to be quiet and you guys need to talk.
No, we're, I keep going back and forth whether we have too much or too little, and I'm now on the, like, not a lot.
Okay.
So yeah, I can finish. My presentation will be very short, so I just give my interpretation of the text. Maybe 30 minutes, I think is enough for the no question. So yeah.
But
Anyways.
did we solve every problem?
Oh, no, I think we cannot solve.
If you like, we can actually reread and then the solve problem and then jump into your.
You cannot solve the. We cannot.
You
solve
will
the
never
problem.
solve the problem.
We'll maybe shed more light on the problem.
Oh yeah, then we can think more. Yeah. So.
Did we create every problem we
Oh,
could
yeah.
possibly create yet?
So then return to my presentation. So I do not have any clear knowledge of the inner chapter, even like outer chapter. So I just focusing on this chapter, the Shanxing, and try to make sense from my own point of view. So the first of all, I also checked the chapter of the title and Legge translate the correcting the nature and mender of nature and mending nature, and Jiporin translate the repairing the inborn nature. But I think this repair and correct somehow has connotation there's something bad and we have to recover to the good condition. But actually the Xing in Zhuangzi does not, have something we have to pursue, something we have to good. So I think it is not good translation, repair or correct. And also we go to, there's another phrase like the Huawi. It's like the unsettle or unmodel our desire, and this is something bad connotation. So at least I think we have to translate Shan as something at least neutral rather than the positive. So I think it's alter or modify would be better, or maybe you can come up with better translation of the verb. And so it's the overall structure. So there is, I think, so the chapter is divided into 3 sections. And for me, the last section is very different, introduce different terminology and different words. There's kind of different periscope. But the many scholars consider this as kind of one consistent theory or consistent chapter. The reason I think it is the overall structure is starting with the opening remark, and the final remarks are really cohere each other. So it's like the opening and the closing make this, the whole chapter consistent. So it's starting from the first line. It says, those who alter their inborn nature living in the world and seeking to restore it to the original conditions through learning, and those who unsettle their desires living in the world of the conventional world, seeking to attain their luminosity to perfection through thinking, they are called benighted people. I think this is kind of diagnosis of the problem. There are certain people who have kind of problem, and this is diagnosis. And then I think the final part, the final remark is the outcome. What is outcome? Therefore, it is said, those who forsook themselves for the external things and lost their inborn nature living in the world of your way, or the conventional world, are people who stand on their heads. So it's starting from diagnosis and outcome. And also it's cohere very well with the Huawi. If you unsettle your desire according to this kind of external things, in the end, you will lose yourself. And also, if you alter your desire, and in the end, you will lose your own desire. So I think this is really a clear opening and the final remark. And then the main body somehow, I think, explained why it is benighted people, in the end, standing on their heads. So I think the first part, the gu zhi zhi dao zhou, and then huari, the harmony and pattern will just naturally emerge from the world. And I think just describing the ideal state. And the second part is Dao Wu Burong and Lani, and this part also ends with the Tianxia Ruanyi, the world will be turned into turmoil. So it describes the ideal state, and the second part, I think they are describing the non-ideal state. And also the second part of the section of the Shanxing also repeat, I think, same thing. In the first Gujuran, and they are in the midst of the obliviousness, and they are, this is called perfect unity, 知一. And at the time, there's no one who deliberately doing anything, but everything is so of themselves. So I think there is kind of further explanation of the first ideal state. And also the second part is when the virtue started to dwindle, and there is a Sui Ran and Fuxi started, governing the world, and the Shunno and Huangdi also governing the world, and Tangui, the Shun and Yao also governing the world, and there's also the Huoran, is people are perplexed and the disordered. So I think the first section gives this ideal state and non-ideal state, and the second section is kind of give fuller or kind of elaboration of these two ideal state. So for me, the ideal state is, I think, one important distinction of the ideal state is everything is a perfect unity and everything, so there's no clear distinction between me and others, and there's perfect unity. In that sense, everything is so of themselves, and there is Huari, that's the harmonious pattern naturally comes from the people's or our inborn nature. The problem is non-ideal state, a state of, I think, Yowei, is a deliberate kind of action state. So this is why there is a Ron, and there's Yi, and Zhong, and Wei and the Li, and then it becomes disorder. And I think the second part in the non-ideal state is give a more kind of elaborate kind of explanation is how world becomes disorder. And it's because Suiran and the Fuxi and Huangdi, they're all referring to this kind of cultural sages. They do some kind of activities for the world. So I think they give kind of more detailed explanation. And I think the first remark on the Su also referring to this kind of non-ideal state of the world, this conventional world in the world of the deliberate action. And if this is the case, so because I start with the question about this, the first, the Ron and E, whether they have positive values or negative values. If this is the structure of this chapter, I think this is referring to the negative value. Ron and E and Zhong and Wei and Li, they are all somehow negative. Starting of the civilization is negative value. Then how can we translate? Because the first phrase is like, there's nothing Tao does not embrace. But it sounds good, because Tao is embracing everything, it's perfect unity. But if it's negative, if we have to read this as a negative, then I think this state referring to, originally Tao embraced everything, but what is wrong? Wrong is try to embrace everything. It's kind of deliberate effort to embrace everything. What about the way? Way, there is a natural pattern we can live by, but this is natural way. But the way start to order everything, okay, arrange everything in order, this is the rightness. And this is also starting of the deliberate weighing or the giving pattern to the world. And then this patterning to the world become clear, and then the things become close to each other. This is the loyalty. I think I think yesterday, Scott's chapter, there's a passage in Zhuangzi where Jiran Wu Qin. If you are perfectly benevolent, there's no qin. There's no reason. If we are in perfect unity with other people, there's no reason for us to become close to each other. So I think here, when there's kind of rightness is clear and things become close to each other, it somehow suppose that the things are not close to each other. So I think this is more have negative values, and then this Ron and Li and Zhong, these are the sign or seeds of the declination. And if this is the case, then as I mentioned, Ron and E, when we're starting from this kind of small deliberate action, but it becomes prevalent in the world, and the world become disorder. And so this is my interpretation. And also, this passage, this part is also kind of similar to what Lao Tzu said in our chapter 18. I think also Scott yesterday mentioned as well, that the great way is abandoned. And there is righteousness, the benevolence of righteousness. When there is kind of 6 relationships are not harmonious, there is emphasis on filial piety and parental affection. And also Lao Tzu chapter 38, when the way is lost, there is virtue, and virtue is lost, there is a benevolence, and benevolence is lost, and there is a righteousness, and at the end is the ritual. So I think there's kind of pattern are somehow very similar to this description of the Ron and E and Zhong and Wei and Li. I think the most interesting part, I think maybe you disagree, so for me it's like very tragic worldview, because ideal state, everything in the state of the perfect unity. There's no clear distinction. Everybody is kind of harmonious living together. But non-ideal state, it becomes gradually decline, and there's world is disorder. And then because like in the end, it says, 有指观指, looking at this way, the world has lost the way, and the way has lost the world, where it can prevail. The world and the way have lost each other. How could the way then emerge from the world? And how could the world arise from the way? The way has no way to emerge from the world, and the world has no way to arise from the way. So I think it gradual decline, there is no turning back. But maybe this is I also influenced by this Da Tong and Xiaogang in the Li Yun chapter, because for me, this is really interesting because in the great unity, a great union, the world is shared by all people. I think it's referring to some kind of perfect, harmonious there's kind of perfect unity. But then the Tao is lost, and there's Xiaogang, starting of the Xiaogang, and this is the people have their own family, and there's own house, and there's private property, and they somehow fight each other. But because of ritual, we can live harmoniously together, and we can achieve kind of prosperity. And this is, I think, Li Yun chapter. This pattern, I think, and also in the Li Yun chapter, there's no turning back. Even though the great union and great unity is really great, but we are human beings, we cannot prosper. We have to prosper with the ritual, and there's no turning back. So maybe I think this kind of tragic worldview, somehow similar to the Li Yun chapter, and also as I remember yesterday, Esther, during the break, and you mentioned about Tian Yun chapter, the movement of the heaven. And Li Yun chapter, maybe you want to maybe make the connection. So anyway, so there's some kind of connection between the Li Yun or this kind of, even though it is not the actual language, but the pattern of thinking somehow maybe reflected each other. So maybe this is how I read it. If this is true, there's no turning back. Then how can we live in this non-ideal world? I think this may be the question this Shanxing chapter is asking. Because there is no turning back, then how should you live? That it gives answer from the perspective of individual who is sages. So what the sages do? Even though they did not hide themselves, their virtues are hidden. The virtues are hidden not because they themselves voluntarily hide. And I think this means that the sages were not physically hiding themselves in the world. They were active in the world, they're talking and they're doing everything, but because of timing is different, their virtues were not seen or not heard to other people. And this is the fate, the Ximing Da Mu, the fate of time is awry. And what also interesting to me is that in the ideal state, it says when Dang Ximing, when they meet the right timing, if they're referring to the perfect unity, they are they are in a grand scale in the world, but they will return to the unity without any trace. So even in ideal state, I think the sages their virtues are hidden. And also, but what about in non-ideal state? Hutang Ximing, when it does not meet the timing, they will be greatly suffer in the world, and what they do, they deepen their roots and maybe still their inborn nature and just wait or just rely on themselves, and this is how to preserve themselves. So even in the state of Yowei or state of this non-ideal world, and their virtues are hidden. So for sages, whether they are living in the ideal state or non-ideal state, their virtues will not be revealed to the other people. So, and then I want to solve another important problem of this passage, what actually B refers here. So when it says that when there's Ron and Yi and Zhong and music and ritual, and the world will, if they are practiced prevalently, and the world will be in this order. Then it's a Bizhong or Mengji. When they are corrected, and one consider one virtue, and virtue will not impinge on others, and if they impinge on others, others then will lose their the virtue. So what this B refers here, and I think I checked the Guoxiang, and it said everyone just correct themselves, referring to this Bizhong, and Chang Xuanying said B referring to the sages who follow the right way. Then if we go back to this non-ideal state, how the sages live, and they do not meet in the right timing, and they just deepen their root and maybe still their inborn nature, and this how preserve their own person. And how the ancient person who preserve themselves, what they do, they just correct themselves. There's a Zhengji. So I think if Zhengji and maybe connected to Bizhang, so like Daxing and Xiaoxing, and this also maybe there's kind of a resonate here. So the stages correct themselves. The B, I think then if may refer to this non-ideal state. When this deliberate action started, if we can Bizhang, these situations are corrected, everybody can just consider their virtues, and then virtues will not impinge on others. This is maybe great, right? This is the ideal state. Then we can conceal our own virtue. And then maybe it somehow relate to the Esther's talk today about the sword thing. So you have the sword, we have to consider. Because for me, I cannot really understand what we have to consider our virtue, what does actually mean. Then I'm not sure this sword metaphor are connected to this one, but when I listen to your the sword metaphor, maybe sword is something, the self, the precious self, but this kind of individuated self. If it is precious, but we have to hide because we reveal our individual self, we can make conflict with others, and there's a distinction with others, and this can impinge on others. So maybe this is why we have to hide. Anyways, because this hiding metaphor is really important. Anyway, so that situation is corrected, we can hide ourselves, we can hide our own virtue, and we do not impinge on other people's. The problem is, as I mentioned, for me, there is no turning back. We cannot change the world. Then what we should do, and they have to, the sages, they just correct themselves, and then their virtue will be hidden, and they will preserve themselves, even though the world cannot be changed. And when I think about this passage, and I was curious because Wengji and Qi Yin, when I consider my virtue, and the virtue is hidden, seems to be the similar or the same kind of phenomena. But then why they use the Dao as a verb and object? And in the case of the sages, the Dao is become the subject and hidden. I'm not sure whether there is a kind of important implications or not, but there is something, if you have anything to say about, maybe I would like to listen. And, so then what does it mean to return to the original nature according to Shanxing? And then I think we can come up with the two state of the condition to returning to the nature, returning to the original nature. The first one is Mengji. So I can hide my virtue, then this virtue will not impinge on others. And also another point is that my virtue will be hidden, and we can return to the perfect unity without any trace. And this state, I think, is ideal state of Wu Wei and Zhi Yi, the perfect unity. And this is in relation to other, this is something in relation, in this one's virtue is also referring to Lao Tzu 55. And since we do not conceal or dissipate our virtue, and our virtue will become abundant. And the second part is slightly different. It's a Lao Quan, what is complete joy? I think this one referring to, in relation to oneself, one can obtain complete joy. And how can we obtain complete joy? Because one is impervious to the external things like the wealth or the fame and poverty, and therefore one can preserve oneself. And this also makes me think that, so the first part of Fu Qi is like, in the perfect unity, I do not make a clear distinction with others. So I hide my sword, and I can be a perfect harmony or union with other people. But in the second part, Lao Quan, and complete joy, I think important function is to make distinction. So in order to be impervious to the external things, or what temporary stays here, and I have to make a clear distinction between what is temporary or what is not, and what is my inborn nature or not. So I think that making distinction is really important point. So I'm not sure these are two different kind of attitude with the distinction. So this is what I just think about this passage, and then I just give my interpretation of the passage. And I think this passage, this chapter talking about in the ancient world of Wu Wei or perfect unity, everything was harmonious and safe. But the world cannot but to degenerate into the world of Yowei, that is Su or artificial or deliberate action. And also, but unfortunately, there is no turning back. The world cannot but to degenerate. Then, also, we cannot find an answer from the world of Su. We can find an answer from the sages who preserve their own person. What they do, they corrected themselves, Zhengji, but rather than they try to correct the world. And how they correct themselves, they just made themselves impervious to the external things and return to their inborn nature and obtaining self-contentment and self-enjoyment. And so maybe our conclusion is we should also live like sages who preserve themselves. Oh, I think I don't know if it makes sense or not. So, oh.
Maybe I'm chairing this
Oh,
session, so questions?
You agree, or is this crazy interpretation? So I don't have any background. I just focusing on this chapter, what they are trying to say.
I'll ask a quick question while other people are thinking of their more intelligent questions. First of all, I actually really loved your presentation because I think you went right into the heart of all the things that I was worried about and like sort of poked at them, which was really good. But now, because I kind of absorbed when you hold on, let's see, the slide that you had just a second ago. You're going forwards. Go the other way. So I really like your summing up here too, which was helpful. But I have one question about it. So they corrected themselves, Zhengji, I got that, rather than corrected the world B. Are you relating that B to the B that you were discussing just a second ago? Like Bijeng, that Bijeng. I guess I just don't, maybe I didn't quite understand your discussion. I think that's possible. Like I just didn't quite get how you get correcting the world out of that. Can you just go over that one more time?
So the Bijang is like, I think be referring to this kind of world which was already degenerated. Yeah. And then if there is no way we can correct ourselves, correct the world, what we just do is we have to correct ourselves.
So you're taking Bijeng as like Zheng Bi, like Zheng, or what does B refer to there? Other people or sages?
No, the degenerated state of the affairs, like the mean, the time, fate of the time. Because the world cannot but degenerate.
Okay. So Bijeng are Meng Ji De would mean if they
are corrected.
Are corrected. Who's they? The world is corrected? The sages are corrected?
Oh no, the word itself is maybe corrected. Because this is not the verb, it's the subject and verb. So maybe correct, it doesn't have to be making correct. It can be naturally maybe corrected. I don't know if it's possible.
I'm not objecting to the grammar, I just don't understand it. Like, or Meng Ji De, like they would hide their own De.
So each person can hide their own virtue.
Yeah.
The world is corrected, there is no deliberate action, and everything will just kind of perfect unity, and then our virtue will be hidden. Anyway, so I just tried to figure it out what B means, because other people give interpretation, but I cannot really get what that actually means. So I tried to figure it out what actually going on in this structure, maybe then B. So they found the Zhengji and then make connection and maybe B referring to this kind of the world as versus to the person or individual.
I don't think your reading is wrong, but I guess my reading might be with their correction, as in the correction of Ren Yi Zhong Li, like the virtues, then you can hide your De or something.
Oh, maybe that, yeah. So you think that B referring to this Ron and E and this ritual? Oh, yeah. That's what I read. Maybe B is referring to specifically this, especially music and the ritual, because music and ritual are prevalent. The world in disorder. Maybe if this situation is corrected, then maybe everybody can return to the perfect unity, or.
It's somewhat open for question whether that darkening one's da is good or bad. I mean, it seems like it's probably good, but that same character was used in the beginning for the benighted people, right? So that's another variable in the interpretation, is if that's having your da darkened is good or bad.
Oh, because the reason
I think it's good here. I agree with the way you're reading that it's good, but it's not. That's another variable in the passage, I think.
Yeah, I think your translation put the two different directions. The initial. So the first one was bad, and the second one was good.
I was kind of troubled because like in the passage, one have to consider one's virtue or darken one's virtue, and there's Mao. So what does actually Mao means?
It's Mao Luan. The commentator says Luan. It's bad.
But I think I checked the Mao is something that impringe on others, territory, something like that. So then it's related to the passage we mentioned about the Lao Tzu. When you have the bright. If you are too bright, it will somehow darken other people, impinge on others people. So if your virtue is important, but if you are too bright and it sort of affect other people.
That's what you did. Your talk was so brilliant that Sonia and Vim are wearing sunglasses throughout it. So.
I've been feeling like it's really bothering my eyes. Yeah.
Too bright. That's why you are very. I impinge on your virtues. I was curious why you were.
Well, I'll ask a question if
Oh.
nobody's asking. No, but just for clarification of what your question of how to live in a non-ideal world, right? I think is what you were saying.
Yeah, because if there's no turning back.
Right. So for the person in the non-ideal world, it seems like it's saying they don't like deliberately go off and hide in the mountains. But do you think they still they've got a job, they work in the government, but they don't really care what happens? Is that, or what do you imagine it's saying to do? You just do the same thing you would do in a good time, except you're not successful and you're not upset about it.
That's. I think because in the later part, you can have your job and there's a kind of carriage, or you have this kind of the carriage or the head or the big good political position, then you are not stick to. Right? So I think even this kind of, the sages, they work in the world, but they do not attach to this kind of external things. It's something very anxious kind of thing. It's like, there's timing, but this is something you cannot control, but you have to satisfy your own cultivation. And similar pattern, but now here it's not about cultivation, it's return to their inborn nature and enjoyment of your nature. So its pattern is similar, but maybe the content would be different. So even the sages, they are actively in the world, but they do not attach it to the external thing. Then you can have complete joy.
There's today I think it was the New York Times, there was this column by Rebecca Solnit about how the climate crisis is a chance to re-examine our kind of definitions of happiness or something like that. And somehow towards the end when you were, so you're in government, but you're not, first of all, you're never desiring more than you have, right? And second of all, it says you're you're not worried about losing you're not worried about failing, and you're not worrying about losing your sinecure, kind of thing, right? So it is being part of life, but it's being part of life without the kind of conventional. It's not really appetitive desires here, right? But it's more. It's more you're doing your job in a way that you're not worried about losing your job because, I don't know. It feels like it's giving you a certain type of detachment from the ordinary conventional values or something like that. There's got to be something different about this. You're not just secret, you look like Clark Kent, but really you're kind of, Lao Tzu. but it's hard to imagine exactly what it is. But it does seem to be kind of you've adjusted your value system in the way that Solnit is talking about. You know, we have a chance to do this at this moment. I don't know. That's what it struck me as in response to your.
So I think in order to have a clear understanding of this passage of Lao Chuan, it's like complete joy is coming from returning to the one's nature. But what is that joy returning to the one's inborn nature? That part is maybe clear, then maybe we understand what is external or not. But I don't really understand what actually this joy come from, what this kind of joy. So this is something, yeah. So detachment is okay, but what we can really obtain, what kind of joy we can obtain from returning to our inborn nature. So maybe I'm not drunk yet, so I don't really understand.
Can I ask a question rather than answer to your question about joy? Two things are not solved. One is raised by you, the 礼乐边行 or 礼乐偏行. That part look like very intriguing. How we are, because this is not the inner chapter, so maybe this the author of Perkins or PN may have some different like projection on 礼乐, maybe kind of mild attitude. So I don't have conclusion, but I just want to just remind us of that part. I hope we can discuss further. And then one more thing is 仁义礼乐. That is okay, but what about the 忠? Why? I mean, just before, yeah. Why 忠 interfere? Why? And then how to connect the 仁义 and then 礼乐? That part I think we should discuss later maybe.
Ronnie,
But
Zhong,
what is your understanding about 忠?
Zhong, so like so originally if we are in the perfect unity, we are close to each other. We don't have to be close to each other. But now there is kind of pattern or the righteousness is kind of the manifested, and then this through we can close to each other. And
Oh yeah, my question is not about what is the translation of 忠, so 义名而勿亲, that one, but rather why, usually, for example, in inner chapter and outer chapter, we always see criticism about 仁义 or redefinition of 仁义 and 礼乐, something like that. So to me, 仁义 and then 乐 or 乐 and 礼, these parts are not very unfamiliar, but why 忠 interfere and disrupt? What is doing here?
It's a totally unusual list. Yeah.
oh, really?
Totally unusual list. Yes. So there is some kind of interpretation of this author want to deliver. I think somehow.
But I'm not sure. I cannot exactly remember. I think this list, similar kind of list, is also appear in the Lao Tzu.
Is Zhong in there?
Yeah, Zhong. Yes, this is why maybe I remind of this passage is not as kind of distinctively different from. Lao Tzu is something I a little bit know, so maybe this is kind of. I try to read too much Lao Tzu here.
I think I saw in the Zhuangzi Jishu someone suggesting that Xin should also be on the list, right? But it doesn't seem justified except that it's a weird
Please
list otherwise.
use my, yeah, oh yeah. Yes, I was thinking of Xin, somehow it's a kind of bonding and making some kind of connection, seems to be. So then maybe we can, after the break, we can think about, searching for what is a relative kind of connection and then maybe come back.
Yeah, so the disadvantage of the way that we did this was it breaks into 3 parts, but our session's broken into 2 parts. So why don't we go ahead and take the break now, because we're 5 minutes into it, and then when we come back, if Youngsun, you want to still take questions, or I can do mine.
No, I don't
we
want to
can
take
do it
more
however we
questions.
want to do it.
Enough.
So let's take a break here then now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.